FBI Director James Comey taking a lot of heat from both sides of the aisle for announcing that the Bureau will take another look at the Clinton email investigation that blockbuster news broke on Friday afternoon. So former Justice Department spokesman Matthew Miller says this, quote, "Was this information Congress needed to know urgently? Of course not," he says, although we're not sure how he knows that. Tom Fitton, the president of Judicial Watch, says that potentially it's as bad as Comey as it is for Hillary. So what does he mean by that? Let's bring in Bill Gavin, former assistant director of the FBI in New York and former chief executive for the FBI in New York, Miami, and Denver. He knows his stuff. Bill, good to see you this afternoon. Thanks for being here tonight.
My pleasure, Martha.
What do you make of all this?
It's disarming, to say the least, to hear the Justice Department come out and say that maybe Comey should never have said anything. Director Comey is caught on the horns of dilemma here. If he didn't come forward and say something and it has such a dramatic effect in the future, he'd have been criticized for that. And, of course, he's being criticized for doing it at this particular point in time. So he's really caught in those horns of dilemma. It's a difficult position for him to be in.
So what does he do next?
I think probably some more information needs to come out. What he did by that letter, Martha, I believe, is he just exposed the tip of the iceberg, a structure of which he already knows the breadth and the depth of as a hazard in this election process. And so he's going to have to do something with that, maybe come out with some additional information. I think we all have to remember that when he appeared in July, there's been 3.5 months since that appearance. Bureau hasn't exactly been sitting on their hands waiting for something else to happen. I think that this investigation has been going on. True, some new information has come to light with the exposition of the documents from Hoomer's computer.
Right.
I can only see disaster for Hoomer in the future with the way the Clinton machine operates with the denial and deception. I can see the power behind the throne, Hoomer Abedin becoming the sacrificial lamb in this whole escapade.
Could be. What do you make of the discussion that it was not about emails that were to or from Hillary Clinton? Does that necessarily exonerate her? I guess it depends what's in them and how that information would have gotten on that laptop if it didn't come from her office.
Well, I don't know. That's a difficult thing to answer, and perhaps that's not totally true. What I look at is that maybe some conversation between Hoomer and Hillary occurred where they discussed the real problem that they had at hand and were, if you can believe this, candid with Hillary. If they were candid with some information about what the problem really was, then I think there's some problem for all of them.
Donald Trump had this to say about Huma Abedin earlier today in Golden, Colorado. Let's play that.
Uma's been a problem. I wonder if Uma's going to stay there. And I hope they haven't given Uma immunity, because it seemed that everybody that walked down the sidewalk got immunity. I hope they haven't given Uma immunity, because she knows the real story.
Bill, your thoughts?
Well, I think that probably he's right. I hope there hasn't been any immunity granted on a large scale that would prohibit doing something with the information that has been brought forward in the past 24, 36 hours, because that would be tragic for the whole country, for us as a citizenry of the United States.
Well, what do you think? I'm just curious what you think the best thing for Jim Comey to do right now. We just talked about the possibility of impaneling a grand jury right away and putting this information in their hands. Is that the way he should go?
Well, I think the bottom line is I think we have to understand that the investigation goes where it goes. He cannot impanel a grand jury. He can only recommend that his investigation goes to the Justice Department and that they impanel the grand jury and present the material to the grand jury. He doesn't have the ability to impanel a grand jury.
Right, obviously. So he can recommend that they impanel a grand jury. You know, the crazy thing is that when you look back at this and the relationship with Loretta Lynch and her meeting with Bill Clinton on the tarmac, which you know, forced her to have to move herself off the case and put the decision about whether or not to move forward and indict in the hands of Jim Comey. So now he's, you know, getting all this criticism for going around her, I guess, to some extent, and forwarding this memo to the two members of Congress and cutting out the Justice Department. He's in trouble with them now. What do you think about that?
Sure he is, and I think we have to remember that what he said before Congress and what he said in both public and the private audiences is that prior to that conversation at the press conference he had in July, he never contacted the Justice Department. He told Loretta Lynch he was going to have that news conference, and when she asked him, "What are you going to talk about?" he said, "You'll have to tune in to find out what I talk about." It's a little bit difficult to understand all the dynamics here, but I'm sure that it's something extremely serious, or he wouldn't have come out with this letter to the congressional committees. And we all have to, I guess, take a step back and see what's going to happen from this point on.
I mean, he has to do his independent investigation and present that evidence to the Department of Justice and see where it goes from there, would be what most people would expect. Bill Gavin, thank you very much. Good to see you, sir.
Thanks, Martha. My pleasure.
Here to talk about this, Dan Henninger, deputy editorial page editor for the Wall Street Journal. Where to begin here, Dan? What an explosive story this is, although I guess at this point we still don't know how explosive.
Yeah, I guess what we have to call is an October surprise without anyone actually knowing what the surprise is. And so we're left with nothing but the politics, raw politics. And I have to tell you, Martha, I'm a little bit surprised at the Clinton campaign's reaction to all this. This has clearly thrown them on the defensive, and they kind of feel they've been on the offense running against Donald Trump. They feel they've been taking leads in some of these battleground states. Suddenly, they're making FBI Director Jim Comey the center of this. And I don't understand why they've decided to elevate this issue the way they have. You know they're going to be on all those Sunday morning talk shows attacking Jim Comey and attacking this issue. But this is about the email server, which is the most vulnerable thing Hillary Clinton has had to deal with. I mean, going back to March of 2015, when the news came out, she gave that terrible press conference. At that point, her approval rating was about 52%. It went down almost 10 points and has stayed there ever since. And now the Clinton campaign is the one that's decided to make this issue at the center of the conversation we're having right now, rather than just saying, let the FBI director kind of deal with this and go forward, because it's not going to come out before the end of the election.
Does Comey have to say something further, and do you think he will?
I don't think he will. I mean, look, for them to say that Director Comey should explain to the American people what he is talking about basically reduces the FBI to WikiLeaks. Clearly, this is about emails between Abedin and Anthony Weiner, and I do not think that the FBI should be in a position where they're simply dumping raw material out there before they have taken a close look at it.
You know, when you look back at the WikiLeaks exposure, what it revealed in many ways was that what the Clinton campaign was trying to project on the outside, that they weren't worried about these issues, was a whole nother story underneath. They were panicked about this email server, saying we need to clean this up. Why didn't she handle this sooner? They were angry at her that she let this issue hang out there. So now you have this new wrinkle from Jim Comey. And the optics of it are that they are exasperated, that they are panicked. That's what we're seeing so far. What are they going to do on Monday?
Well, I think they should be panicked. Look, whether this came out, Director Comey told Congress that his investigation into Hillary's email server was completed. Not only was it completed, but they gave Cheryl Mills and Heather Samuelson, her lawyers, immunity and agreed to destroy their laptops.
It was incredible.
Extraordinary.
And no grand jury.
No grand jury.
And Hillary Clinton was interviewed at the very last minute for a very short time, and then he came out. I mean, he's taken a lot of professional heat for the way he handled this.
We should establish that as a baseline. This should have gone to a grand jury. Now Jim Comey's trying to deal with this mess. But I think that you have gotten to the point here where the Clinton campaign has to believe that Director Comey would not have done this unless his agents, his investigative team, had come in and put something on his desk and said, sir, this is very serious. We're going to have to deal with this. And Comey has recognized it as such. But at this point, I don't think he can just walk out in public and dump it into the election. He's got to go through a process. Comey has been playing by his own book here since July. And I think it's probably time, if I were advising him, to impanel a grand jury and let the chips fall where they may eventually.
I would imagine that is what he will do. He's been under a tremendous amount of heat within the agency. There's been a lot of people in the agency who were very unhappy with the way this was handled. They believe that the evidence that came forth in the initial investigation did point in the direction of an indictment. And now he has an opportunity, based on this information that was put on his desk, to right his own ship and his own reputation. How much of that do you think is what we're watching here?
I think not just his reputation, but the reputation of the FBI itself, which has taken a big hit. This is an American institution. Most people trust it. And I think there was dissent inside the FBI over what he did. If Congress holds hearings, like Jason Chaffetz, calls FBI agents in front of him under oath, they're going to have to testify honestly about what was going on inside that investigation. I think there's an effort here to try to repair the reputation of the FBI, taking this information that is relevant to the original investigation and dealing with it in the appropriate way.
And you've got to believe that this information that was put on his desk was something he could not walk away from, that he felt he had to speak out about. And if he had held it till after the election and then it came out, the criticism would have been, how could you possibly not have made people aware that you had this beforehand? Politically, though, Dan, before I let you go, what's the impact? I mean, people who are going to vote for Hillary Clinton are going to vote for her anyway, right?
I'm not so sure. I mean, her support, even among some Democrats, the ones who supported Bernie Sanders this week. Let me mention one thing that we haven't talked about. The Doug Band memo earlier this week about Bill Clinton, Inc. At the time, that was tremendously damaging, and that is why a lot of left-wing Democrats, progressives, do not like the Clintons. So her support has been weak, and this is not going to help at all in states like Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Missouri, Nevada, where some of these Republican senators are in tight races with their opponents. I think this has finally created the Clinton undertow that everyone thought was happening to Donald Trump and a lot of the down-ballot tickets. This is completely suppressive of Hillary Clinton's campaign right now. The Democrats have to be very unhappy.
Suppressive is exactly the right word. I mean, it could force people to just say, forget it.
Yeah.
I'm out. I'm not going to vote. But we will see. 10 days to go. Thank you very much, Dan. Always good to see you.